The door creaked open. She stepped inside, letting the scent wash over her. Dusty, ancient, comforting. She breathed deeply, savoring it. This place had held the weight of the world. How many tears had been shed here? How many prayers whispered? The priest came up beside her. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he said. His voice echoed oddly in the vast space. "A sacred place." He paused. "You can feel the presence here." She nodded slowly, turning to look at him. She could see the shadow of his collar under his tweed jacket. She could see the taut line of his jaw, but she couldn't read the expression on his face. Priests were trained not to show their emotions. She had been trained not to read those emotions. She knew her purpose here, to assess the damage, to determine if this place should be deconsecrated or restored. The church had been abandoned since the plague, its bells silenced, its altar blackened with ash. But at night, when the wind carried just right, people swore they could hear it breathe. Her eyes fell on the pews, splintered and torn, littered with what looked like scorch marks. Had there really been a fire? Or was it a metaphor for the burning sickness that had ravaged the village, that had burned through the homes on this hill, carrying off mother and child, man and wife, until not a single soul remained? She wandered toward the chancel, past the remnants of a statue, its head long since lost. As she neared the altar, she could have sworn she felt something brush against her leg, but she dismissed it. The floorboards were loose here, the result of centuries of foot traffic, no doubt, or perhaps the plague victims buried beneath the foundation. People swore the earth was cursed. The locals had sealed the doors with iron and tar, whispering that too much had been buried beneath. She didn't believe them. The moon was pale and bloated, spilling light through the broken stained glass. The air smelled not of dust, but of something damp alive. And then she heard it, a sound rising through the stone floor, steady, deep, impossibly slow, breath. The church inhaled, and the air thickened with a stench of turned earth and old marrow. It exhaled, and the flame of her lantern flickered as though the darkness itself had drawn it closer. She should have left. Instead, she followed the sound to the altar where the floor had cracked open centuries ago. A staircase of limestone descended into a mouth of shadow. Her lantern caught inscriptions carved into the walls. Not prayers, but confessions. Long lines of words in Latin. "I poisoned my brother. I stole my neighbor's child. I murdered though I was innocent." Each line grew smaller the deeper she went, as though written by a trembling hand desperate to force its sins into stone. The catacombs opened before her like a cavern of ribs. The walls were not brick but bone, femurs stacked, skulls pressed into mortar, jaws locked in silent screams. The deeper she walked, the more the skeletons shifted. At first, a skull turned ever so slightly, its hollow sockets following her, then a clavicle creaked against another, like fingers drumming impatiently on a table. And then, whispers, they crawled from the bones themselves, dry as parchment, speaking in unison, murmuring names she had never told a soul, her childhood lies, her cruelties, the faults she'd buried, sins she had never confessed. Her lantern dimmed, her chest tightened, the air was thick with breath that was not mine. When she reached the chamber's heart, she froze. There, in the center, lay a figure built from thousands of bones, an enormous skeleton, not human, but something assembled to resemble one. The skull was not one, but many fused together, jaws overlapping, empty mouths opening and closing in ragged whispers. Its ribcage rose and fell, though there were no lungs inside, only blackness that seemed to pulse with hunger. And then she saw it. Propped against the wall was another skeleton, not in the bone walls, not part of the piles, alone, upright, its skull tilted toward her, as though waiting. And clutched in its bony hand was a lantern. But her lantern was in her grip, burning in her palm, its handle slick with her sweat. She looked down, yes, it was there. Warm, real. She looked back at the skeleton and saw herself staring through the hollow sockets. Her jawbone, her ribs, her death. The bones began to rattle. The catacombs shook. The whispers became screams. Her lantern sputtered. The figure of fused bones rose from the floor, stretching its spine higher and higher. And all around her the walls split open. From the cracks spilled faces, not whole bodies, just faces rotting, pale and wet. They writhed out of the bone mortar like fruiting fungi, their mouths gaping wide, their teeth grinding, and they screamed. The sound was unbearable, a chorus of every voice that had ever confessed here, every secret ever carved into stone. The pressure drove her to her knees. Blood trickled from her nose. Her heart pounded as though trying to escape her chest. She tried to run, but the catacombs stretched on, the passages looping back into themselves. Every turn brought her to the same chamber, to the same waiting skeleton, hers. She dug her nails into the wall, trying to claw upward, and the bone shifted beneath her hand. A skull split, its jaw opening wide. Teeth sank into my wrist. Another clamped on my ankle. A dozen more mouths tore into my arms, my shoulders, my throat. The catacombs had waited. They had hungered, and now they swallowed. The last thing she saw was a lantern falling into the rib cage of the giant skeleton, its flame guttered out, in that hollow chest, as though it had always belonged there. And when the darkness consumed her, she heard the church above take another slow, steady breath.